It is a great honor and a privilege to introduce Rabbi Avraham Tanzer, the Rosh Yeshiva of Yeshiva College, the Rav of the Glen Hazel area Hebrew congregation, my Rav. You spoke him up on mitzvah. I am so indebted to you, Rav. Rav, if you can tell people who are going to be watching this amazing video, you grew up in America. You were born in America
Sure.
in 35.
That's right.
And you went to Telshe Yeshiva. Your parents, you came from a Hasidic background.
We get to the Panur Rov, isn't it?
Okay. How did you get to meet the Panur Rov?
All right. So I don't know why I'm being videoed, because you're video important people. There are many more important people than me, but I'm touched, I'm flattered, and I'm delighted that we have this long association that goes back to when you and your brothers were young children, and your grandparents were running the school, the Bernard Patley School in Yovel, your grandmother, and I remember those people who were determined that their grandchildren had a Torah education, and they made it happen. And your mom Tamara and your father Boris, we remember them with cherished memories. Anyhow, thanks. Thanks for the attention. Okay. My story really is a simple story. I'm one of those, we are part of those fortunate people whose parents emigrated to the United States before the Second World War. Marsha's parents came even earlier than mine. They came to Baltimore, but my parents came right at the end of the First World War, 1917, 1918, and so my father was a teenager. And my father met my mother. That's a separate story, on the east side of New York. My father was a member of the first Agudah Minyan of Shomer Shabbos on the east side of New York. It's printed in Mike Trist's biography. His name is mentioned. He was a quiet man. He was an Erech. My father was an Erech to whom Torah and Yiddishkeit and Hashem was his life. Okay, he was a man who could never miss a minyan, never. And that's already a tangent. Now we're going off on a tangent.
It's good. No, it's all every word is.
Look, so I was fortunate to be born into a family where Yiddishkeit was paramount. Otherwise, I don't know where I would have been. But it's all my parents. Okay. My father. We're talking about my father now. My father, when he came to the United States, he said to his father, you see, the Yeshiva Ben Yitzchak Lechonon, but we call it YU today, but it wasn't a university then, was already in existence. So he said, maybe I should go learn for a while. But his father said, Yankee said, that's not why we came to America. We came to America to make a living. One day you'll send your kids to learn, okay? Right. But my father wasn't happy with that. He wanted to learn. And my father took every opportunity to learn, and he was a blue-collar worker. For a while, he had his own grocery store in Williamsburg in Brooklyn. Later on, he dabbled in a few other things, but he didn't make it that way. He never made it in the business sense. He was an employee as a blue-collar worker, doing embroidery and bedspreads and stuff like that. And so he worked, okay, and always wanted to learn. In America, today it's at 67, you can get Social Security, and you can even get it a few years earlier, but the earlier you take it, the less you get. Now, my father waited for the moment he could stop working and get Social Security, which was 62. And for that, he obviously had to take a cut in the amount they got. He was delighted. And from that time, from the time he was 62, for the next 25 years, my father went to 3 shiurim a day, or 3 sidorim a day, in Williamsburg, in Borough Park, wherever he lived, because that's what he wanted. He wanted to learn Torah, and he wanted his kids to learn Torah. That was the real legacy my father left us. Ahavat Torah. He loved Torah. He once said to my brother, can you imagine anything more upsetting than sitting at a shiur not understanding? Can you imagine that?
Wow.
Yeah. That's a legacy that remains with me to this day. Chaim said, the mitzvah kibbud avim is not just honor your father, You honor your father because you see something in him which is unique. And I think that Abbas HaTorah and that Yerushalayim, my father was in shul 3 times a day, always, but he used to pay children to come and say the brachas for him, so he could answer Amen at the end of the brachas, the beginning of Birchas HaShachar. To him, that was life, that was it. It was all about Hashem. And he never made money, but he always gave tzedakah, because tzedakah is a part of life. No chachmas. Okay.
So he instilled this level of learning and...
No question. I got it from the time I was a kid. Yeah.
And Reb, how come, or what made you decide to go to Tels?
Well, my father decided, my mother decided, I decided to go to Tels. I wasn't a serious kid. And Tels had a reputation for discipline. And I had a cousin that went to Tels. So if he was good enough for my cousin, probably be good enough for me too. So that's how I got to Tels. Okay.
And in Tels you met the great Rabbanim, the great Rabbanim of the generation.
I had the privilege of knowing Rabbi Bloch, who died when I was young. I was around 20. But Motel Katz, who was my Rosh Yeshiva, and the person who together with Don Holo sent us to South Africa in 1963. Motel knew South Africa. His mother and father lived in Daria. Mother and father lived in Daria. He had 6 brothers and sisters living here. I had the privilege of meeting them all, and when he passed away, I was asked to notify them of his passing. So Motel Katz and Rabbi Yemer, these were the people I knew for 13 years. Rabbi Chagifta, Rabbi Sorotskin. I was particularly close to Rabbi Sorotskin. He was my chavrusa for years as well, and encouraged me to come to South Africa. And I retained a close relationship with him until he died a very young man. But these were the people that played a major role in my life, and to whom I'm indebted to Rabbi Chaim Stein, the whole Hanhola. And we had an uncle there, on the Hanhola too, Rabbi Aaron Paperman, who was the executive director of Telshe Yeshiva, and they sent us here in '63.
And Rabbi Bloch, you knew...
they were the founders of Telshe. Rabbi Bloch and Rabbi Katz founded Telshe in America.
Can I ask, did they ever speak about losing their mishpacha in the Shoah?
Let's put it this way.
Did they ever...
They never hid it. They didn't hide it.
But did they speak to the students?
Not in public. We all knew the story, but obviously there was nothing secret about it. But just to give you the facts of the story, how did they get to America? How did Rabbi Yemer and Motel get to America in 1940, etc.? They
went to fundraise. They came to
fundraise. Yeah, they came to fundraise, and they were going to go home. Okay, but then the curtain came down in Europe, and you couldn't go home. And the truth of the matter is, Rabbi Yemer and Motel did not know till 1945 what happened to their family. So for 5 years they were sitting in the United States on a Spielkiss, not knowing what happened to their family. And the family, they all got killed. Motel lost a wife and 10 children. Rabbi Yemer lost a wife, I think 4 children, and that's it. And they didn't know anything about it. But then they were stuck. And so they said, look, let's make a yeshiva. It's all we can do. There's nothing else we know how to do. And so they started building a yeshiva, and they decided they didn't want to be in New York City. They wanted something further away from the centers. And so they established Telshe in Cleveland, Ohio. Right? And they started Telshe in Cleveland, Ohio in 1940, and that's it. That was the story. Right?
It's amazing to have lost so much and to have kept the emunah and to be even strengthened.
There's a word. Let's see. It's been published many times, and I just saw it yesterday again for some reason. You see, when you marry a bottle, had a meeting in America to decide to establish yeshiva, one of the people who helped them very much was Pinchas Mordechai Teitz of Elizabeth, New Jersey, a well-known row of creative actors who built the Torah empire in Elizabeth, which is flourishing to this day under the guidance of his son, Rabbi Lozamer, who was my contemporary in Telshe. All right. So when they had that meeting, he said the following report. He says, when David was running away from Shaul, so he made had a discussion, an arrangement with Yonasan. What was the arrangement? That Yonasan was going to test his father to see if he really wanted to kill David or not, and then he was going to. How was he going to tell David? Because that was dangerous too. So this is the thing. He was going to go out into the field, and he was going to send he was going to shoot arrows, and send the Nar to retrieve the arrows. And he said to him, if I tell him the arrows are from here to this side, right, then you know it's safe to come home. And if I tell you the arrows are going to the other side, well, then you better know you better run, right? And that's what happened. That was the test. After Shaul made it clear he wanted David dead, so Yonasan had to convey that to David, and that's how he did it. And these are the words Yonasan used when he said to the Nar, which way, where the arrows are to be found. He says, if they're going to go that way, lech, go, ki shlochach Hashem, because God has sent you. Right? So Rabbi Meir said, do you hear what Yonasan said? A Jew is never running. Wherever you are, shlochach Hashem, God sent you. And if we here right now, Hashem sent us to do something, and that's to build a yeshiva here in Cleveland. And so the Telshe of Cleveland, which today, Baruch Hashem, has many branches in Cleveland, of course, in Chicago, the late Rabbi Chaim was Rosh Yeshiva for so many years, in Riverdale, and in other places as well. And of course, in Eretz Yisrael, the Sorotskin family have built beautiful mezuzahs in Eretz Yisrael today, as I mentioned to you earlier. Special people, the grandson of Rabbi, runs the biggest koil in Eretz Yisrael, not a koil, many koilim, and it has a yeshiva gedola, which is Hashem with Teferes, carrying forward the banner of Telshe. Telshe is alive, and Telshe exists, and came from this handful of people here.
It's amazing. And Rav, in Telshe, when you were there, Rav Aaron Kotler also came.
Aaron Kotler was there. He was there on a visit.
And you met him. There's a very famous picture with you and Rav Goldfein.
In 1955. In 1955, so Rabbi Goldfein and I were both 20 years old. All right? So the Telshe moved from the inner city to the suburbs. And because there was a tragedy, almost a tragedy, when the inner city wasn't safe anymore, and one of our Talmidah was beaten up terribly, so they had to move out of the area. So they moved to an estate in Wickliffe, Ohio, which is still the home of Telshe to this day, right? And in 1955 they had an official opening, attended by the governor of Ohio, etc., etc. But more important, a great Shabbos attended by the Gedolei Yisrael. The giants of that day came to Telshe for Shabbos. Among them, first of all, the Ponevezh Yerov came from Eretz Yisrael.
Rav Kahneman.
Rav Kahneman came from Eretz Yisrael. Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky was there. Rabbi Aaron Kotler was there. Rabbi Ruderman from Bnei Yisrael was there. The leader Yuli, Rabbi Savitsky was there, and so on. I can't even remember all the names.
And Rabbi Moshe Feinstein?
I don't remember him being there, but
you met him.
Yeah,
you had a kisha with.
I had a special kisha with Rabbi Moshe because my very dear close friend, mentor, and teacher, Rabbi David Halder, who I owe so much to. I really owe so much to that man.
I remember him speaking.
Yeah. So Rabbi Halder was a close confidant of Rabbi Moshe, and so with Rabbi Halder, I went to Rabbi Moshe many times, and you know, a gadol will not answer questions to someone he doesn't know, because he doesn't know what you're going to do with the information. So, but if you come with someone he trusts, he talks. So my key to Rabbi Moshe was Rabbi David Halder, a dear friend. Whatever I know about speaking, I learned from Rabbi. He was the brilliant darshan of the generation in America.
As a small child, I remember him speaking at Yeshiva College.
Yeah. Okay, so that was it. So we saw everybody.
And Rab, you also met the Lubavitcher Rebbe. You had a kisha with the Lubavitcher Rebbe.
I had Yechidus. They have recorded my Yechidus. In 1966, the Rebbe was still young. I was young. In 1966, the Rebbe made an impression. made an impression and left a major impression on the world. What is it? There's no question about that.
And Rav, also can I ask with, because I have a kish with Reb Shmuel Valkin, you met, or you...
Listen, if you're in Tels long enough, people popped up. And don't forget, in those days, we're talking about 1950 I arrived. In those days, we American kids didn't know what to make of this. But many old Telser arrived. That means tell people who learned in Tels who survived the war. There weren't that many. Most of the people were killed. Tels on Chav Tammuz, we visited Tels, Marsh and I, and there are open fields where thousands of Jews were killed. Men in one place, women in another place. Unbelievable.
There's very little left. There's
nothing in Tels, nothing at all, except the building that the Yeshiva has, which is now belongs to the Jewish community, but there's nothing to do with it. Anyhow, it was horrific. But some of the survivors used to come to Cleveland, and of course they couldn't believe what they saw. They couldn't believe that Tels would live again. It was supposed to be dead. It was all over. It was gone. But when they met their Rosh Yeshivas, their friends, their colleagues, their fellow students from the Chaim, they were falling all over each other with emotion and talking in deep conversation for hours on end. And we were too young to realize, what do you think they were talking about? Who made it and who didn't make it? And where were we? Where were they, It was, you imagine what they were talking about, those terrific things. But young kids are young kids. So we didn't know what we were looking at. We didn't know what we saw. Okay.
Yeah. And Rod, can I ask you, because Tels is legendary. Coming to South Africa, when you came, I met in the Sangam Gardens. There was the late Mr. Dines, who learnt in Tels. There were a few that had come here before the war. They managed to escape before the Shoah, before the outbreak of the war. Did you meet in South Africa people that had learnt in Tels?
When I arrived, there were quite a few around. They were still alive. When I came in the 60s, it's a long time ago, 50 years ago.
I think Rabbi Lapin, he's one of the very few that went back to Lita. I don't know if he went to Tels, but Rabbi Lapin...
No, Rabbi Lapin went to Tels.
So he went to Tels.
Rabbi Avraham Chaim, A.H. Lapin, studied in Tels.
Wow. Yeah. He was one of the very few from South Africa to go back to Lita.
Yeah, there were a few.
Yeah.
Wow. Some went to other yeshivas, but Rabbi Lapin went to Tels.
And Rab, so you had the great schut.
Wait, one of the people that went to Tels who really played an important role in the establishment of Yeshiva College was Rabbi Sholem Merkin. Rabbi Sholem Merkin is Rabbi Yisrael K's grandfather, and his daughter Bessie, that was the daughter of Rabbi Sholem Merkin. He was a Musmach of Tels who lived in South Africa and was doing business in Johannesburg.
And he was one of the founders of
One
Yeshiva
of the
College.
founders, together with Rabbi Kosovsky, and more than that, the Yeshiva College started in his house. He opened his own home where he was living to the first group of Chevra, including Rabbi Saunders, my predecessor, who lived in that house with him.
This was in Parktown. One of the Bochrim, I think there were 4 Bochrim in the very beginning, was Nati Super. He was a patient of mine.
It's 8 Victoria.
And a very close friend for many years, till he was Nifta, Nati Super.
Rabbi Susha was one of those people.
Yeah, and then Rabbi Shusha went to Tels in America.
Yeah. And Rabbi Eric K. was there, and of course he became a son-in-law of Rabbi Bergen. Yeah. And I believe the connection between Yeshiva College and Tels, which started with Rabbi Saunders before me, etc., was probably through Rabbi Merkin, because he was the only Telser among them. Wow. Rabbi Kosovsky was a Mir, he wasn't a Telser.
Yeah, he went to Mir, Rabbi Kosovsky.
Right. But they obviously felt they needed an English-speaking person, and they could have found that in Israel too. But I don't know if they realized how and what and when. Okay? But they said they needed an English-speaking person, and Rabbi Merkin said, I have connections in Tels, and so I think that's how I was born.
And Rav, I think you and Rebbitzin, you were offered a 2-year contract to come here in 63.
That's right, we came for 2 years.
And that 2 years, Baruch Hashem,
that was Min HaShamayim. Everything's Min HaShamayim. Everything's Min HaShamayim.
So, can I just ask, here you came to like a midbar, it really was.
Don't say that.
But it wasn't so established.
It's not the Johannesburg you have today.
Yeah.
Okay. It was a different world.
I think you and the Rebbe were very instrumental in extremely instrumental in establishing the Glen Hazel area Hebrew congregation. I remember when the shul was in the hall of Yeshiva College. Look at it today.
Listen, we came for 2 years, didn't know if we could do anything anyhow, so we tried, that's all. We tried, that's it. And if the Rebbe wanted to succeed, Hashem made it succeed. No genius.
But Rabbi, it must give you tremendous satisfaction to
Listen,
see what one has created, and not only what one has created physically, but what you've imparted, from Telshe, the whole derech that you've instilled in all your shins, the love of Yiddishkeit, of Torah,
But we see this as us, not individuals. We and a lot of people helped us. A lot of people helped us, and in the last couple of decades of many Moses, many positive institutions of Torah learning, of intense Torah learning, which create the kehillah you have today.
It's true. Rabbi, I just want to mention, there was, and you were very close as well with the Rabbi Eloi, the Dayan Eloi, who I had the zchut to know as well, and he had the distinction of, he knew, I think, every single family, personally. He knew, when you would speak to Rabbi Eloi, he would tell you who your grandparents were. He knew, and I think you have the great zchut of following in that footsteps, that you, I think every student, every student that went through Yeshiva College, you developed a special kesher with each student, with a family, and you remember things from each family. It's a unique attribute.
You're very, very kind, and I wish it were true, but I don't think it's possible to be true anyhow.
Well,
but anyhow, whatever kesher one creates,
it's a tremendous zchut, and
that's what it's about. It's about people. Everything we're doing is about people.
But I think also the most wonderful thing that you've instilled in this community is, you had the late Rabbi Pfeiffer who came, Rabbi Goldfein, and you just saw how Torah, how it expanded and how it encompassed everybody, and it wasn't that this is martial or that Torah is coming, and the more Torah coming to the kehillah, the greater the kehillah grows and flourishes. So it was an amazing thing, the cooperation and the achdut. I think, and that's why this kehillah is unique. That it
was a team. It was always a team. Yeah. It was Rabbi Kosovsky. He was the architect. He was the dreamer. This is what he wanted, a yeshiva. And when Rabbi Kosovsky left Europe, and when he left Europe, he was running from the Nazis. Don't forget, he never could have gotten into this country if his father and mother weren't here first. His father was the Rov.
He was in the
Bezdin. And the Bezdin. All right. And when he came, before he came, he spoke to the Pon of Yisrael, the Kohen Lerocha, and he spoke to Rabbi Bar-Ilan of the Netiv's family, and both were he very often. Pon of Yisrael had so many landslides, so many people from his town and Pon of Yisrael. He had married most of them. He was totally involved. And Rabbi Bar-Ilan had visited the country in 1931, and they both said to him, don't try to make the adults more committed than they are. You won't manage. You won't manage. Start to create a community of the young. Make a yeshiva, no matter how small, etc. That's the future. To commit yourself to that, and something may come out of it, right? And that's why he came. And here he found people. There were tremendous people. I don't want to mention names because it gets out of hand. But a man like Rabbi Brunner, one has to mention. But Yosef Brunner today, Baruch Hashem, alive in Los Angeles. May he continue to be blessed with health, etc. He was an engine. He helped Rabbi Kosovsky drive it. He made it happen. You had Zelig and Mitzi Katz, the Katz brothers, Lou Franklin. Oh, Rabbi Merkin, as I said. Rabbi Saunders, my predecessor. These people it was a labor of love. And there was no fertile ground. There was no fertile ground. There was not a crowd of people who said, we need a yeshiva. Not at all. As a matter of fact, we started with a high school for boys only, which meant you had a high school and no feeder, no primary, no nursery. Where did the kids come from? Some reverends in the country, like the Kramers, the barons, sent their children to our hostel. We had a hostel here, and those children, those men, children, not children, they are today 55 years later still learning. They're the Torah in HSO, running Kodelim, etc. But there was no natural constituency. No one needed it. No one wanted it, except the people who thought we should have it.
There's a wonderful part in the book called, in the most amazing book, The Call of Africa is heard in Brooklyn, where I think you went to collect and you asked for yeshiva, and the wife said, my husband's already set yeshiva.
Yeah.
They didn't know what yeshiva was. They thought...
She wasn't Jewish, that woman. Okay.
But it's amazing to...
No, but
it wasn't a fertile ground, you're right.
It wasn't fertile ground. But at the same time, South Africans were always proud Jews. They didn't reject Judaism. They didn't become reform.
Yeah.
They never looked for other ways out. They tried their best to be as identified as they could, and they made compromises because they thought they had to. They had families to support. They came here without language, without money, without anything except families that needed support, and so they did what they believed was the best they could do, and Baruch Hashem. And that's why their children returned. The Panav Rav said their children will come back. Litvish Eden.
He had it's like a nevuah. He knew that, and it has happened.
Sure,
it's like a circle where the children have...
But it's the children of these people, not somebody else.
Yeah.
Don't get South Africa, the government did not allow Jewish immigration here after the war.
Yeah.
Because every country in the world was affected by Holocaust survivors for the positive. They changed America, they changed Australia, they changed England, they changed Israel. All right, we don't have any here.
That's true.
All we had was the few that we had got into Rhodesian eventually made as individuals. No one came as a group.
As individuals.
No Rosh Yeshivas came with Yeshivas. No Hasidic Rabbeim came with the Kehillas. No, individuals. And the individuals were brave and courageous, and they were proudly identified. Klal Yisrael, Eretz Yisrael.
So, Rabbi, I just want to mention, I have the great zchut that I was the very first Standard 2 class in Menorah Primary.
The first? Okay.
It was the very first Standard 2 in Menorah Primary.
And
I remember with very, very fond memories.
Yeah.
And I still have a lot of the friends from that class are close friends to this day.
I take great pride in the fact that our Talmidim remain so close to each other. It's a badge of honor that students feel close enough 50, 60 years later.
Absolutely. So, Rav, I just want to thank you so much, and for all you've done for the community here in South Africa that has spread all over the world, for your bochrim, for everybody that had the great zchut to be in your very special school and to have known you and to still know you, and may you just have mazel bracha and all of Hashem's blessings.
Thank you, Halavai. Thank you. I'll buy that. I'll take that. We need that, Halavai. And thank you so much. And look, we tried. That's it. We tried. We succeeded. We didn't always succeed, but that's it.
Rav, thank you so much.
Okay.
Rav, you mentioned about the Panovich Rav and his connection to South Africa, which was very deep. The Panovich Rav, he came here often and knew the families here.
The Panovich Rav was he was the Rav of Panovich and Rosh Yeshiva Panovich in Lithuania, and so of course he was the rabbi who married so many of his families that he married ended up in South Africa. So when he came to South Africa to raise funds after the war, or before the war as well, he would go to his landslide. He would go to his people. As a matter of fact, very often they would come to him. He didn't have to go to see people. They came to him. The Rov, that was their Rov. And he believed in South Africans. He believed that South African Jews, Litvish Eden, as he would say, they're going to come back. They're going to come back, have faith, believe in them, and they're going to come back. And in a sense, that's what happened. South African, as I mentioned before, South African Jewry did not have a post-Holocaust influx. We weren't inspired by Holocaust survivors. They weren't here. They weren't allowed to come here. And so the Tshuva movement, which has changed the face of this community, has come from within. The children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren of those who came from Lithuania in the 20s and the 30s, they're the ones who came back to Yiddishkeit, who found their roots. much of the happiness of the neshamas of the Zaydis and Bobis wherever they are. And that was Ponevezh Rov. Always believed in tomorrow. Always.
Rabbi, is it true there's a story that somebody had a building in central Johannesburg and all the rent from the building went to the yeshiva?
I don't think that's true. What is true is that the Ponevezh Rov bought 2 properties in central Johannesburg with money he raised in this country. But of course they sold it hopefully in time.
And that helped with the...
No,
but that was the money that he raised in South Africa?
Yeah, that was money raised in South Africa. Somebody left here.
Wow, that's an amazing thing.
Yeah. And when the Ponevezh Shul came to an end, came to its demise, the money was also given to Ponevezh Yeshiva.
And look at it today. It's one of the
greats. It's a world yeshiva.
Rav, thank you so much.
Okay, thanks.
So yeah, it's a tremendous chut. It's a great honor and a privilege to be with you, Rav. I cannot thank you enough.
Thanks.
I want to thank you again for speaking about Bar Mitzvah all those years ago. It was Parashat Lech Lecha. You always remind me. But being the very first Standard 2 in Menorah Primary, it's just been a tremendous chut to be part of Yeshiva College and part of this congregation, and to have you as our Rosh Yeshiva and the Rav of our shul. So I really want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. On behalf of everybody, we are so indebted to what you've achieved and what you've brought to this community and what you brought for Am Yisrael. So thank you very much, Rav.
Leslie, thank you very much. Thank you for thinking that I'm important enough to warrant such consideration and such prominence as this video that you've just taken here now. And we are very proud, and I'm very proud to think that we produced people like yourself and your brothers and many other young people like you and families who, Baruch Hashem, are making a difference around the world. I know you're all making a difference, and that's the real nachas. Real nachas is knowing we worked for yesterday, for today, and for tomorrow. May Hashem give you and your family every bracha v'atzlocha in Eretz Yisrael, with Klal Yisrael, and thank you so much for the attention you've given us today. Baruch and I truly appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you,
Rav.
I really appreciate it.
Okay.
I cannot thank you enough.
Thank you.